When the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish. And then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, oh glory, oh. We'll cry glory, oh glory, oh. Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Black History Month webinar. My name is Tara Favors, and I am the Chief Human Resources Officer for Mutual of America, which many of you know. And it is my great pleasure to welcome two of my friends to this conversation. Let me introduce them and give you their bios. So first we have Christina Swarns, and Christina is the Executive Director of the Innocence Project. Founded in 1992, the Innocence Project works to free the innocent, prevent wrongful convictions, and create fair, compassionate, and equitable systems of justice for everyone. Prior to joining the Innocence Project, Christina was the attorney in charge of the Office of Appellate Defenders, one of New York City's oldest providers of appellate representation to poor people convicted of felonies. She's held prominent roles at the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund Incorporated as both litigation director, overseeing litigation in economic justice, education, political participation, criminal justice, and as the director of the Criminal Justice Project. Her illustrious career also includes serving as the supervising assistant federal defender at Capitol Habeas Unit, Philadelphia's Federal Community Defender Office, and as a staff attorney with the Legal Aid Society. Christina earned her JD degree from UPenn and a BA from Howard University, which we just chatted about. The men's dive and swim team just won the first place championship. Woohoo! And she's a nationally recognized expert on issues of race and criminal justice. And what's not in her bio is she is one of only 5 Black women to ever argue in front of the Supreme Court. Amazing. Thank you, Christina, for being here. Next, I'm happy to welcome my friend, and as we call each other, my brother, Kevin Richardson. Kevin is a member of the Exonerated Five who was wrongly convicted along with 4 other African American and Latino teenagers of rape and assault that occurred in New York City's Central Park in 1989 when Kevin was just 14 years old. Tried as a juvenile, Kevin was convicted to 5 to 10 years. After another person confessed that he was responsible for the crime and the DNA evidence corroborated the confession, all 5 were exonerated in 2002. December 2022 marked the 20th year of their exoneration. As a teen growing up in Harlem, Kevin played the trumpet and was a big fan of basketball, particularly the Big East and Syracuse University's team. And I'm going to note the little Syracuse orange that I have behind me. He dreamed of attending Syracuse University and playing trumpet in the marching band. Kevin, who is now married with 2 beautiful daughters, actually, I should say it's not in your bio, Kevin, and a beautiful wife who I know, you should fix that, Kevin, is an acclaimed advocate for criminal justice reform. In 2019, in honor of his exceptional work and as a tribute to his childhood aspirations, Syracuse University established the Our Time Has Come Kevin Richards Scholarship, which supports the financial needs for Black and Hispanic students. Kevin was also presented with an honorary bachelor's degree of fine arts in music at the 2020 commencement ceremony, the first honorary undergrad degree conferred in Syracuse University's history. Thank you both for being here. So as I told both of you, I have about 12, 13, 20 questions that I could ask you guys, but I know that we probably only have time for about 5 for me, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So we're going to jump right in, and I'm hoping the audience, which I'm sure is engaged, will pick up on some of the questions that I didn't get a chance to ask. So Kevin, I'm going to start with you. First of all, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you being here. Your wrongful arrest and conviction happened over 35 years ago when you were 14 years old. Um, those who are in New York, and I'm a New Yorker, likely remember what happened. I vividly remember when it happened, Kevin, and you know that. And others may have seen, and if you haven't seen already, please watch When They See Us by Ava DuVernay, which really tells your story. So, not the story from each of you and your brothers, as you call each other's perspective, which was one of Netflix's highest rated releases. So, I'm going to start at the end first, Kevin. So, you and the other members of the Exonerated Five, whom you call your brothers, but I'll just say, interestingly enough, you all did not know each other. People kind of put you together, but you call your brothers now, but did not know each other. Literally were screaming your innocence for decades. Can you describe what it felt like to hear that someone else confessed to the crime? And what was the road to exoneration like?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Wow. It never gets old speaking about this because this is indeed my life story, and this has turned to my passion, as Christina knows, and you do as well. Uh, when I first heard the name, The Real Assailant, I was working a night job trying to make ends meet as a security officer. When I first heard the news, I couldn't believe it actually, and a good friend of mine called me and told me the news. I was working an overnight shift, and I told him, "Stop playing with me. It's very late. I'm tired." And when I actually found out, the first thing I did was go home, which I still lived with my mother at the time. And I went home and I asked her, "Was it true?" And she said yes. And we embraced each other for a long period of time. And then I was thinking back, did they really find the person after all these years? Because this guy had nothing to prove, but he felt inside that he had a feeling that he wanted to tell the truth. Let it be noted that he had a life sentence, so he wasn't trying to work out a deal with anybody, or just he just wanted to do something good for that matter. So dealing with that at the time, just knowing that someone has really come forward to admit to this crime that was brutal and was well known, and to be known at the time as the Central Park Five wasn't a good thing. Now that we're exonerated and the full name exonerated to mean to be free ish, because it's still things going on, as you know. So I'm just thinking back to that time of being 14 and my brothers 15 and 16, respectively. It was a time that I couldn't get away from, and now has become me. I didn't let it control me, but it is part of my past. But by me embracing my past, it's helping me reshape my future.
Yeah, I don't want to walk you too far back, but and we talked about you being a 14-year-old, which just let that sink in. You were 14 years old. Um, I remember vividly, you lived this, the media. Can you tell us what, and the people who are on, think of a 14-year-old child. What was that like for you? And I know you're close to your mom and your sister. What was that like for you?
Like as you mentioned previously, at that time we were screaming, we were innocent, right? And I always say that our roars, we was roaring like a lion, but it was whispers to the world. We felt like nobody was listening. So just being so young, yes, I didn't look like I do now. I was very very young, naive. I was 14, and
Mm,
to go through that, I didn't know I had this strength within me at that time. And my mother used to always tell me that the truth will come out. I believe my mother, but did I really realize that it would happen? No, because at that time I felt like the world was against me, and I knew it was plenty of people in my corner, but the guilty by the audience or by the general public overweighed that, and I felt like it was so much pressure on myself, and instead of trying to live an average life of a 14-year-old, trying to go to the prom, dreaming of attending Syracuse, it was all shattered. And I remember my sister Angela, which was portrayed in When They See Us. She said I had this strength
mm,
that she never seen before. And people often ask me, "How did you get through that, Kevin?" And I just did. I just had this resilience within me, which I use a lot when I speak
yeah.
about resilience. perseverance, strength, which all ties in together. And I think back at that time, I was really strong, and my family was strong to be there with me, because if it wasn't for them, I sincerely think I wouldn't be here today, because they actually reeled me into being the man I am today, which I didn't know I had that strength. But we had to fight against during the 80s. Everybody that knows the 80s, it was very harsh, and going through this things in the 80s and 90s with my case and Bensonhurst, Howard Beach. It was so many one after another. So to be part of that at the time, it wasn't a good thing, but I had the strength to know that the truth will come out. And my mother told me, just keep your head up high. And I really didn't take that lightly. I really did keep my head up high, despite what the world thought of us.
Yeah. So, Christina, this is your life's work. And so, Kevin and his brother's story is not unique. It's not a unique one. So, you work as the executive director of the Innocence Project, and you seek to exonerate wrongly convicted through DNA testing, and then on the back end of that, the reform of the criminal justice system to prevent further injustices. The title of this session we purposely chose to be race equity and justice reform. So I'd like to start by asking you, can you just give us the statistics around false arrests and convictions, and what do the statistics tell us about race and equity in the judicial system?
Well, thank you for asking, Tara, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you today and to your colleagues. And it's always a pleasure to share the stage with you, Kevin. I have only done this work my entire career. I started out as a public defender in New York City and Manhattan, and now I'm at the Innocence Project. But really, study after study after study shows that, right, at every point of discretion of a decision making juncture in the criminal legal system, you'll find racial disparity and racial disproportionality, right? Whether you look at the front end of the system, sort of the point at which the first contact happens between a police officer and an individual, right? And we've obviously seen lots of examples of that over the last 5 years, whether you're talking about George Floyd or Eric Garner or so many others. But also, right, and in other instances of people that of whose names we will never know. I think back to the policy of NYPD's stop and frisk, right, under Mayor Bloomberg, who, when at its height, NYPD officers were stopping about 700,000 people a year, 90% of whom were Black and Latinx, right? That's an example of how, and 88% of them were innocent, just to be clear, right? That's an example of just how race and influences, right, the process. So if that's how police are bringing people into the system, that's going to be how the system looks through to the end. And we see that disproportionality at the backside as well, right, in terms of sentencing, right? Black people and Latinx people winding up with longer sentences, including disproportionality well documented over the history of this country, right, in the administration of the death penalty. And because at the front end of the system, we see that disproportionality sort of throughout, we also see it in the wrongful conviction data, right? So if we as an organization then endeavor to try to free people who are wrongfully convicted, that same disproportionality is going to hold, right, in our work. And that's what we see, absolutely. So in terms of the numbers, 3,000, almost 3,100 people have been exonerated in this country since 1989. 65% of them are people of color. And another 100 people have been exonerated from death row. And again, the majority of those as well are people of color. But beyond sort of the straight disproportionality, right, we also know sort of the trends, right, shows how race sort of impacts the way the system functions. So the National Registry of Exonerations, which tracks sort of all of the numbers in terms of people who are wrongfully convicted, did a comprehensive analysis of wrongful convictions since 1989. And what they found were that Black people are 7 times more likely than white people to be innocent if they are convicted of murder. Black people who are convicted of murder are almost 80 times more likely to be innocent, than other people convicted of murder. Innocent Black people were 8 times more likely than innocent white people to be falsely convicted of rape. innocent Black people, here's a shocking number, 19 times more likely to be convicted of drug crimes, innocent Black people, 19 times more likely to be convicted of drug crimes than innocent white people, right? The statistics are unbelievable and they are consistent throughout the system.
So let's stay on that because I also looked up the kind of the conviction. So 95% of, tell me if this is wrong, 95% of federal convictions were secured through guilty pleas. According to the same National Registry of Exoneration, 25.6% of 3,443 exonerations involved a guilty plea.
That's right.
And so this begs to ask, most people would say, I would never confess of a crime if I didn't do it, but the statistics are obviously telling us otherwise. So why would someone confess to a crime they didn't commit? And can you give us an example of we have Kevin here, but maybe another example of what illustrates that? And I guess third question. So why would someone do it?
Right.
What's an example of it? And then how do you figure out what cases to take on when there are so many cases?
So it's a great question. And we talk about this. I know Kevin talks about this all the time because everybody says it. I say it, my daughter would say it, right? We will all say that. I would never confess to a crime I didn't commit. But the truth is, right, this is the sort of the power of sort of DNA and, right, that it has been able to demonstrate, right, through science, right? We have all these convictions that took place where people, confessed and we as a country thought once you confess, that's all there is to it. But sort of DNA, right, the science sort of cut through that and showed us, right, that not every confession is actually true. So it really required us to think about the circumstances in which people were, right, making confessions and why was that happening. And so there's sort of two ways to think about this. First, there's, right, people who implicate themselves during the course of an interrogation, right? This is what happened with Kevin and the other exonerated 5. And we see that a lot, right? Young people, right? Teenagers, people who have intellectual disabilities, people who are under the influence, really high risk of making a confession in the interrogation process when you're in that room with a police officer. Why? Because we tell our kids, every single one of us, right? To be honest, right? To do kind of, right? To follow what adults say, right? And so when kids in particular are put into the room with what, police officers are experts and trained, right, to extract confessions, right? And so you have a kid in a room with experts who are trained to extract statements, and the law permits those experts to lie, right, to the children, to whoever they're talking to, including children. So, right, Kevin and I'm interrogating Kevin, and I say, Kevin, I know you broke into my house last night. And I can say to Kevin, I have a video camera. There was a video camera in here. It captured you. Your wife, Kevin thinks he's at home with his wife, right? No, I'll say his wife is in the next room. She is telling me that, he wasn't home. The law permits the police to use deception and interrogation, including against young children. Right. So this is one of our big policy initiatives at the Innocence Project, to end the practice of deception and interrogation, first and foremost with children, but really globally. Because for us, it's like it's a no-brainer, right? Why would you have to lie to someone, right? If you are so confident, right, in the process of your interrogation, you shouldn't have to lie, right? We shouldn't be using lies to extract confessions, and especially not from children. So that's one area, right? So people implicate themselves in the interrogation room. And then there's a second piece of this, which is sort of people also plead guilty in court, even though they're innocent, right? And I have an amazing colleague, Rodney Roberts. He's an exonerated gentleman who serves as the Innocence Project's reentry coach. Rodney was arrested here in New Jersey. He was charged with a sexual assault. He had fleeting contact with his appointed lawyer. Ultimately, he finds himself in a position where his lawyer tells him, here are your choices, and you have 25 minutes to make a decision. You go to trial, you will get life because the witness is going to come in here and she's already out in the hallway and she's going to identify you as the person who committed this crime, or you take 7 years today, right? He had a kid. He had a life to lead. And so his words, which were so powerful, are, I sabotaged myself to save myself, right? He pleads guilty because he thinks he has no meaningful choice, right? And this is a systemic problem that we call the trial penalty, right? You are threatened with such a, and right, Kevin's sitting here as evidence, right? The hit on the exercise of the right to trial is so, so heavy, and that's what there's enormous pressure put on people not to exercise that right, that many people make what is, a coerced decision, um, to plead guilty, right? And I think of New York City right now, thousands of people today, I promise you, are making that decision to prevent themselves from going to the, excuse my language, the hellscape that is Rikers Island, right? Like, anyone is going to say, I'm not going there, right? If it means I'm going to get a misdemeanor, if it means I'm going to go home or Rikers Island, I'm going to take a plea and I'm going to get out of this, whether or not I am guilty.
I sabotage myself to save myself. So how do you figure out? So I'm how people write to you, right? How do you figure out which cases you're going to take?
So we have an extraordinary team of folks at our intake department. It's about 15 people who are literally experts at analyzing sort of requests for representation. We get 3,000 letters every single year of people asking for us to represent them. Our team looks through those letters. They're requesting transcripts. They're requesting, reports of forensic evaluations. Right? They're doing a really comprehensive front end analysis. And the question for us in those cases is, right? Number one, are you saying you're innocent? Yes. Number two, right, is there biological evidence? Number three, has the biological evidence been destroyed? Because that happens way too many times. So, right, is it available? And if it is, can we exonerate you? If the answer to those questions are yes, then the case progresses and we assign a lawyer and away we go.
So, Kevin, I'm going to go back to you and I'm going to kind of skip a little bit to where you are. And again, I have a bunch of different questions, but I'm guessing that we're probably getting some questions. So I'll kind of hold off. So let's skip to December, which was one of the most recent times I saw you. So much to be proud of. The work you have done, and you should talk about the work you've done, has truly changed lives, and you're working on, more importantly, changing policy. But I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your accolades at Syracuse University, and if you can talk about the recent Central Park Gate renaming.
Whoa. Yes, as everyone knows, I'm very humble, but yes, I should speak about my accomplishments, right? Because this is something that's monumental, and this is a legacy, right? This legacy building. Um, First of all, I just want to say really quick about what Christina was speaking about. The numbers were staggering, and it's also true. And just being like firsthand, the effect of what happened to me and others is just mind blowing, mind boggling that it still happens. And it's just, even that I'm in it and I work with the Innocence Project as well, but still hearing that is just ridiculous that it's actually true. Everything Christina stated, it's crazy. But fast forward into December 2022, which I was happy to see you amongst my other SU people and a slew of other people. I never thought this day would happen to actually have a gate. And from the beginning, we never stated that we wanted to be gate of the exonerated five, because I know we like the poster boys of it, and rightfully so. If it's going to bring attention, I will be that. But it was for the gate of the exonerated to go deep
The
into
Central
everybody.
Park has these gates, right?
Yes.
The entrance points, of which I don't think and most of them are named I think they were all named for like people who worked in Central Park when it was being built, right? So like there's like the Farmer's Gate or something. They haven't ever named a new gate like since Central Park was created, right?
The last one, I believe, was 1862. That, that somebody was had a gate. So to be under that company and to be here and to be relevant, because I'm not going anywhere, and my brothers neither. We just beginning actually. But to have that, it's monumental. It's even bigger than myself. I plan on bringing my kids there to witness it and experience that, because they need to know our history and black culture, and black history is American history. Because we're the ones that he actually created a lot of this history in the first place. So to be under that, is just a blessing. and to have my family and friends there and to witness it and to see this go down, to be the first of, all the things I accomplished for meeting you in 2019 when I first walked into campus, never thinking I would actually be there from wanting to go in the 90s, and to be there and have everyone roll out the orange carpet for myself and my family, for one, to be recognized, to be awarded with things that I love, like a trumpet, a Yamaha trumpet, which is a very good piece of equipment. To have a jersey with number 44, which represent all the legends of Syracuse, that number alone represent legends. And to have that with my name, you know, accounted with that is beautiful. But my baby, the most thing that I'm proud of, the Kevin Richardson Scholarship Fund, to see that be endowed, to see me leaving a mark when I'm not here, that my name will still be around, and to actually really meet the first two scholars a few months ago.
Who were your scholars? Tell me about them.
Oh man, so it's one from named Ashley from the Bronx, and the other one from Harlem. Two females, and when I looked at them, they remind me of my daughters. And it was even more personal because when I met them, it was a surprise. I actually came on campus and we had a luncheon, and for them to be there with me and to see that they're part of me and I'm them, and my name will carry on. It's a blessing, and I really know. I think I'm always humble, and I think Syracuse. And someone that actually tells me is yourself, Tyra, that tells me no, you believe, you deserve this. You're supposed to be here. This is what you're destined to be. So to know that I have this and I can now to carry this platform and use this as a stepping stone to use my name to raise awareness to others and continue my growth because I'm still evolving as a man as we speak. So everything I learned throughout the years and be all this attached to my name, I don't take it lightly. And now one thing they did, and when I say they, is the criminal unjust system is awaken five sleeping giants. And now that we have our own lane, where we're definitely making our ancestors proud. It's a quote that Ava DuVernay, which is my sister, she tells me that we are now our ancestors' wildest dreams. And now I really believe that, and I really take that very seriously in my work I do with the Innocence Project, amongst 80 other things that I do. I really take that with a sense of pride that I'm here and my brothers is here. Now we have the opportunity to pay it forward to others. When I was growing up, we used to say each one teach one. So whatever I learn, pass it on to the next person and use it as a sponge and then get knowledge from each other. So to say the least, I'm so honored to be a part of everything that's going now and moving forward. I sometimes I scratch myself and just be like, I can't believe it, but yes, I do believe it because I'm here and then it was put into the universe. Now it has been created.
One of the things that I appreciate about you is your humility. Which is why I'm like, tell everyone what you've done because you are so humble about it, but also just your power of forgiveness. And I think that to your point, you don't know the strength that you have until you have to hearken on it back to when you're 14, but you also just don't know your ability to forgive until you really have to forgive. And that's one of the things that I see and I am amazed by you. You're also just really cool. So I just like you as a person, but just generally your heart for forgiveness is really amazing. So I'm going to ask this question of both of you because I know both of you, Kevin, I know you've been involved with some legislation. Christina, obviously you have too. And that'll probably take us a few more minutes and then I'll kind of open it up to more questions. But maybe for both of you, how can our colleagues shine a light on inequities? How can they demand reform in the judicial system? What do you, maybe Kevin, I know you've worked on, I know there's an act that you were working on. Christina, this is obviously what you do. Maybe Christina first. What's the ask or the action that our colleagues who are listening to this and are floored by the statistics, what should they be doing?
Thank you. Great question. So I have a bunch of different ways I think people can engage. I'll start with the easy ones. Vote, right? Number one, right? Be registered, be vote, be aware of your, candidates' platforms, right? Ask questions around where they stand on issues of criminal justice, right? Make sure that they are, interested and committed to meaningful criminal legal system reform. So number one is vote. Number two, when that jury summons appears in your mailbox, and it is going to, right, do not exempt yourself from service, right? So many people are so inclined, right? It's sort of a running joke, like, how do I get out of this? But if all of us, right, all of us who are well-meaning, really conscious and concerned people excuse ourselves from, right, jury service, right, we don't get um, truly fair cross sections of the community making jury decisions. So, we need the entire broad cross section of citizenry to actually engage in, jury service. So we want you to show up and participate. Take the time. Yes, it's boring. Yes, it's inconvenient, but it's so so important, right? As Kevin's case dictates. And we want people who are informed about these issues sitting in those jury boxes, right? And bringing this information with them as they analyze cases and cases that come before them. Number three, of course, the Innocence Project works on a lot of policy reforms across the country. So I encourage you to go to our website. And sign up to be an advocate, right? We will alert you if there is a piece of legislation that we're moving. Like, for example, I talked about, we have been successful in getting several states already to ban deception and interrogation of young people, right? We are actively working to ensure that that legislation is passed in every state across the country. So, if you sign up, we will send you an alert, when it's in your jurisdiction, and we would want you to, sort of, we give you all the tools you need to make it super easy to reach out to your legislator and, express your support. Engage in those ways with us as an organization. And of course, we would love your financial support as well.
Okay, great. So, Kevin, I know you've been working on a few judicial kind of policies, I guess. Is there anything you want to tell us about something that you're most proud of?
Yeah, one that stands out right away is speaking, especially because I was a young kid when I got coerced, about when interrogations happen in the precinct or any room that should be recording from the beginning process all the way through the end. And that's something we've been working on. That as soon as a minor get arrested, they should be filming there because in my case, you only seen the finished product of me and my brothers doing a written confession and a video confession. But you didn't see the 3 days of interrogation without parental guidance, without anything to help us. So it was a big gap in between those days. So it's very important, and I'm happy that we're working on that to have um, filming of an interrogation so you can see everything that happens in between the lines because it was at least over 36 hours of interrogation and then 3 days of going to three different precincts. So that's something I'm very proud of. And another thing that Christina touched on is about the police deception thing, that police can actually lie and get away with this. So we must change that dynamic because it's atrocious that police can do that. And in my case, they told us everything that we wanted to hear, and they did this in this way where it was like a lot of people know good cop, bad cop routine, where one cop is very polite, quote unquote, and one guy is very aggressive. And they use these tactics and they're seizing at doing this. So we must change the whole landscape of that. And I think everybody that's involved is working so passionately about it. Another thing I want to tell people, you don't have to be in my position to do this. And everyone doesn't have to be an activist to be active. There's different ways you could do. There's different lanes you could do. You go, yes, right to your politicians, right to the high offices. Stand in the fight, whether it's inside or outside. And I think we're in a good place because we have the youth it's a different youth from the 80s, that they really are tired. They're sick and tired of being tired. And they want to fight. And it's not just people of color, there's other people that's joining in as well. So I know we say this slogan, but it takes a village, which is very true. You know, it might sound like, oh yeah, it takes a village, but it's something that we really need, everybody to come in collectively and make a change. So that's just two things out of a whole mixed bag of things that we're working on. I'm just proud to be a part of it.
Great. I'm gonna pull Tish back on. I have one more question that I may ask you, but I know Tish said we had at least two questions so far. So Tish, do you want to come back and ask the questions?
Hello. Yes, this has been a great discussion. We do have a couple of questions. And if I may touch on what you were just speaking about, Kevin, with representation, it was really mind-boggling to just think about the fact that a minor would not have legal representation or parental or guardians. And I don't know if the laws around that, but it just seems so unjust. But just to bring this back to our audience, one of our questions is for you, Kevin, and it says, it's a blessing you and your family are on the other side of an unbelievable nightmare. I have two brothers and I have fears of my own. I read your conversation in the Daily Nebraskan, and in regard to your PTSD, I wondered if the work you're doing with the Innocence Project helps with your ongoing recovery.
And Kevin, that was the question I was going to ask you. So,
You know, I'm still a work in progress after all these years. And the thing that people see me, they see me like in physical. When you see me, you're like, oh wow, he's put together. He's a nice young man. He's well dressed. But we have these indelible scars that myself and my brothers went through. And yes, PTSD is a real thing. Mental health is real, and that's something I still go through to this day. Um, by me speaking and raising my voice and to raise awareness is therapeutic. And then when I go through this, even right now, me speaking, like I said from the beginning, it never gets old because I was healing me as well. So every time I travel and speak to different universities or firms or wherever, I can get a word out to people. It's refreshing for myself because I'm still working on myself to be a better man, a better husband, better father, all that in general. So, especially with men, when we speaking about mental health and things like that, sometimes as men, we don't want to be vulnerable to let people in about, being less of a man or not being strong. But recognizing is the first thing to healing. Recognize what you have been through and what you're going through. And after that, it's easy to actually peel the layers, so to speak, unravel all the layers that continue to get to the core of yourself. So I'm grateful for that question because that's something I still go through to today. And my wife, Jahansi, which Tyra knows, she will tell you firsthand, um, yeah, I'm a great guy, but I'm not the easiest at times. Because there's times that I am human and things that I remember since I was a kid that happened to me about being physically abused by the detectives. That's something that still sticks me to this day. And we're talking about 33 years later now. Going to, so it's something that still affects me. But speaking about it and getting it out there is very therapeutic and it's been working for me.
Yeah, that's something that could be a whole different conversation, the effects of trauma and the fact that you have resilience, perseverance, and strength, as your North Star, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what helps keep you grounded. I want to pivot, if you don't mind. There's a question for you, Christina, and it says, is it true that there is a new law that prevents police from lying to suspects to obtain a confession?
In 5 states, we've managed to pass that law in 5 states that police cannot lie to juveniles, to children, in the course of interrogations in 5 states only, not in New York, not in New Jersey, not in Connecticut, nowhere around where we are right now. 5 states have passed.
We're actually national. So do you know what the 5 states are?
Oh my gosh, you're going to make me lie to you.
Sorry.
Illinois, don't ask me hard questions. Don't ask me hard questions. Illinois is one of them. I can Google. I'll Google while you ask the next question, but I'll look at my list. But yeah, only 5 states, right, out of 50, which is incredible. And as Kevin knows, when we launched a campaign to get that law passed in New York, right? It was unsuccessful the last time we went up. So, this is a fight that we are taking to, every single, state house in the country because, I mean, it's just incomprehensible that right now, right, police officers are authorized to lie to kids, right? We will get to adults later, but right, we're starting with children. And I will also add, just sort of on the prior conversation, we also just, as my policy team, also in Maryland, got a law passed that requires children to have an attorney present during police interrogation. So we're also working on that as well. And I'm going to get you those states right now.
That sounds great. The one thing I'll say before I turn back over, thank you both again for being on our call. I don't see any additional questions. I had one comment for both of you with the tremendous work that you do. Kevin, it's critical, the work that you do, obviously from your perspective, but I know you and your brothers have the shared faith that you can make change, and I wanted to acknowledge that. And I'm a product of Harlem, so it was also great to see earlier this month that your brother Dr. Yusuf Salam announced his candidacy for councilman in the 9th district. So it's very pivotal what you're doing, and all the support is definitely necessary. Tara, I'm sorry, there is one more question if you don't mind, Tara. What age is considered a child? Is it under 18 or is it younger, since these young men were 14, 15, and 16? And I know that Corey was tried as an adult. So these are all great questions. If either of you would like to, chime in on that.
Depends on the charge, right? If you are charged with a serious in New York, where these cases took place, if you're charged with historically at that time, if you were charged with a serious violent felony and a serious categories, and you're over, I believe it was over 14 and up, then you could be charged as an adult. If you're not in sort of this category of violent offenses, you would otherwise go to juvenile court. But the law at that time allowed kids as young as 14 to be tried in adult court if they were charged with serious violent felonies. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, Corey Wise, as everyone knows, he was charged as an adult. And as you can see, he was a kid. And actually, he was smaller in stature than we were. He was a very small frame. And I remember that time he went straight to Rikers Island. We went to Sparkle Juvenile Center. But after that, I quote unquote graduated to Rikers Island. And on my 21st birthday, that was my gift to go to Rikers Island, then proceed to Department of Corrections with adults.
So, Kevin, let me ask you about. I've heard you talk about going to parole hearings and what that was like. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my sentence was 5 to 10 years, and when I went to my parole hearing, I did 5 years, and everyone that knew me in prison, they knew I was like a modeled inmate, which they say. A lot of people looked up to me, the way I carried myself. And I had this stack of papers of witnesses and people that will vouch for me. That didn't mean anything when I went to the parole hearing, because the only thing they wanted to hear was that I commit a crime. And I told them no. And the parole hearing lasted 5 minutes. After that was over, I went back to my cell. And in prison, you see a list of people that's going home or is paroled. And I realized they gave me another 2 years. So I wound up doing 7 years on my conditional release date, which is the date they have to let you out. So I did 7 out of the 10 years. And they gave me 2 more years just because I wouldn't admit guilt. And after all those years of fighting, why would I do that? Just to come home. So I was at the point where I knew I was going to come home regardless, because at this time I was well aware of my rights. And I studied the law library while I was in prison, so I knew a lot from being 14 at the time. So I gained a lot from that experience. But when I went to the parole board, that's all they really wanted to know about you admitting guilt. And I would never do that, and neither did my brothers.
Christina, what does the road to exoneration look like? So you get a letter, you look to see if you have these kind of things that you said. Is there evidence? Is there so on? So then you have all this. You have that there's either evidence that proves that someone didn't do it, but I'm assuming from there it's not like, okay, let them go. What does that look like?
So, it takes longer than it should rationally take. I mean, the challenges that we face are, sometimes complicated by, so first, right, the first complication is, can we get our hands on the biological evidence, right? And often prosecutors will fight us, right, to say, no, we're not going to consent to you having access to the evidence, even though, to be clear, there's no cost to any jurisdiction, right? We bear the cost of the DNA testing, so there's no cost to them. So we have to fight to get access to it. Once we get access to it, we have to see what condition it's in, because often many of these are old cases, and the evidence has not been stored in, in the ideal way. So evidence is often degraded, right? And we have to see whether we can get a sample from that evidence, right? But a lot of the time really is, really battling with the state over getting that evidence, getting authorization to test, which to me, we find endlessly frustrating, because if you believe in your conviction, right, and it's going to cost you nothing, right, to have your conviction validated, which is what we will do, right, if you're right, then you shouldn't really have any problem with our testing, right, biological evidence in those cases. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. And so my colleagues in the post-conviction litigation teams often, spent our back and forth, on and on, right, fighting to get access to the evidence and getting the right to test it. And so often our cases take years to get to ultimate exoneration, just because we're fighting over what I think are, issues that we really shouldn't have to argue over.
So some of this reminds me of just the importance of knowing your rights. So Kevin, Christina, for our viewing audience, what should people know? How does one advocate? We talked about how do you advocate for the system. How does one advocate for themselves?
Yeah, I think back for me, 14, I didn't know my rights. I didn't know my Miranda rights. And when that was read to me, uh, I think about it now, and I tell people, I remember saying, "Who's Miranda?" I had no clue. Now, who's Miranda? I really didn't know. And the way that they read me my rights when I was dazed for being hit with a police helmet in my eye, from not knowing what's happening. Then they read me my rights where I was confused and not understanding. And that's how they covered themselves, which is the police officers. For me, I have a daughter that's going on 15. She's 14 now, the same age I was when I was arrested. And I speak to her about these issues, about knowing her rights. Unfortunately, we have to teach our kids about how it is when you step out your door. There's a great chance that you're going to be harassed, and because of the way that you look, the color of your skin. And my daughter, she's of African American descent and Latina as well, so she has both of those. So I let her know the real of how it is in this cruel world, and I give it to her straight actually about that, how this world can really chew you up and dispose of you. So that's one thing from my experience speaking to people, let them know not to fall victim like the way I did, but I can't blame myself for falling victim because I was a young child, and it's not a good thing when young children have to learn about their rights now, but that's a society that we live in, a world we live in, where we must preach that to people of the younger generation. And even my 5 year old, she's only 5, but when she see me on TV and she see me from before, from watching when they see us little clips, because she's too young to watch it, but she's seen the part of me being coerced or being attacked, and she's crying. And at 5 year old, she see that pain, and she's thinking that she's crying because she's thinking they're going to take me away again. And I have to let her know that I'm here. That was TV. But what you see on TV is a depiction of real life. That these things happen all the time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to second what Kevin said, right? And I think that it's not just, I think people have to take a very conservative approach to their interactions with the criminal legal system, right? Meaning that you should err on the side of having a lawyer, right? Always. And I think most recently, we saw this, nationally, we saw Alec Baldwin, right? Is that right? Alec Baldwin, right? Get
Mhm.
charged, with this homicide right after, and people were blown, right? He was like, I went and cooperated, right? And so I just think you have to really go into. There have been several op-eds about sort of why, that was an unwise decision on his behalf. So I really think that, unfortunately, the way the criminal legal system functions at this moment, people really have to go into it being really conservative, right, Kevin? As Tara knows, I have a daughter the same age as yours, right? And so, I think all of us want, as parents or as human beings, to go into an interaction with law enforcement and just say, like, don't be ridiculous. That didn't happen, right? This is right. Something silly or something, right? You feel as though it can be easily explained, right? And that's what Alec Baldwin thought, right? And that's what Kevin and his, and his family thought. Unfortunately, that's just not the way the criminal legal system is functioning at this point, right? I have, hopes and aspirations for a different, criminal legal system, but right now that's not the way it's functioning. So you really do have to go into it understanding that you have to really be conservative and protect, exercise, go in with as much protection as humanly possible. And so, really, almost at every turn, to be advised and represented by counsel is the best course of action.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that one of your goals is to eventually not need your job.
Yes, that would be wonderful, right? And I have the states. Sorry, and the states where the police are no longer allowed to use deception and interrogation of children are Illinois, Oregon, Utah, California, and Delaware.
Yeah.
Thank
And we're
you.
coming for the rest of the states.
coming ahead. So if you don't have any more questions, I'm going to ask Kevin about being a movie star. But do you have anything? Do you have anything else?
There's one more, and it would be for Christina, and I think I'll then turn back to you. Are hearts and minds really being changed, in your opinion? These situations are so unfair. Why are the changes not happening quickly?
That's such a good question. That's such a good question. Listen, yes, the truthful answer is yes. Hearts and minds are definitely being changed. I started practicing I've only done criminal defense in 1993. I graduated from law school in 1993. Let me tell you something. The world today, after the emergence of the Innocence Project, right? After, when they see us, after all of these stories of people seeing and hearing, right, these moments of, right, my clients coming out of these courtrooms, coming out of prisons, oh my goodness, that has changed the game spectacularly from when I started practicing until today. There is no, right, Kevin, was what he was talking about, what it was like in the 1980s, right, in the criminal legal system. It was presumptive guilt, like, period, hard stop, no questions asked, right? There was just, do the crime, do the time, lock them up and throw away the key, let God sort them out, right? There was really there was just no recognition of how deep the problems with the criminal legal system are. We're now 2 years away from the largest worldwide protest of, the failures of the criminal legal system in this country. Oh my God, things have come a long way, right? We're in a world today where prosecutors' offices have conviction integrity units, where prosecutors themselves are now committing resources to reevaluate their own cases, to identify their own errors, right? And participate with the defense in releasing people who have been wrongfully convicted. So yes, in my lifetime, I have seen, right, as an attorney in the criminal courts, I've seen the change. So there's no question, right? Every time Kevin tells his story, every time, one of our other colleagues and former clients tells a story, that's the important thing is, right, to get us out there, because every time, every person that Kevin hears Kevin is touched, because people cannot believe in, his grace, right, his humor, his humanity, right, given what he endured. And so it's so transformational. And so for us, it's really important for us to get the story out and to get, in front of as many people as possible, because these stories are so transformational. And that's why, right, we want people who have heard those stories voting in jury boxes, because we can change the way the system functions, for sure.
appreciate that. Systemic change often takes incremental progress, so it's encouraging to hear that this does work. Tara, I'll turn it back to you. I'll go back off camera.
Well,
And
wait 1 second before you go off camera. So, one, I want to say thank you to both Kevin and Christina. Kevin, I want to tell you, although Syracuse paraphernalia is not behind Tish, she's also a Syracuse graduate. Coincidence. I didn't know that when I joined here, but I want to acknowledge her orangeness as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
thank
so
you,
I
Tish.
wanted to just acknowledge that, Tish. Let it be known that you are also a Syracuse sister.
No
Um,
worries.
you know, I think both of you, honestly, I do think that this is not always an easy topic to hear, but it's life. And so it's hard as it is to hear, it's even harder for you to have lived. And so I truly, genuinely thank both of you. Kevin, I figure we'll end on a lighter note, but you were recently an actor in a TV show. Um, and actually, let me say this. For those of you who do not know this story, I recommend, again, Ava DuVernay's When They See Us, which is a four parts, I think,
Yes. Yes.
on Netflix. It's another one of those things that it may be hard to watch, but it was hard to live. And everyone has to figure out the age of their kids to watch it. Kevin knows that I first met him. A few years ago. My kids watched and I watched the movie, and so I do think for those who really want to understand, it really does. It tells your story from each of your mouths, and that's important. So I'll say that. But so Kevin, maybe as we close, you can tell us about your brush with celebrity recently and the TV show you were on, and what was that like?
Well, I'm about to trying to embark on another part in my career. I was a big fan of Queen Sugar and Ava, which is, that's my sister, so I'll just say Ava. She texted me and she asked me would I like to come on the final episode of the final season of Queen Sugar, which is a big deal. And I was so excited, and I told her, "Are you serious?" She said, "Yeah, my brother. You said you wanted to come and get some experience." So of course, I agreed to go on set, and that experience of just getting my feet wet, because I actually told Ava that I actually wanted to pursue acting because when I was young, it was different ways I wanted to use myself because I was shy. So to be on stage, to get a degree, in visual performing arts, things like that. So there was another part of my dream that came into fruition. And I went on set and I had a little cameo in there. And my little cameo was a big part of the show because it was black farmers. Anybody that watched Queen Sugar, it's about black farmers and people of color fighting for their land. So I had a pretty big part in there, and it was great to receive the love of everybody that was there. And I was in awe of people, but they was equally in awe of me. And having me on set to experience was beautiful. So I might be trying to do some more stuff, with some roles that's leading to something powerful. So you might see me again in the future, but baby steps. It was a nice experience.
All right, heard it here first. I think with that, I'm gonna ask you two to hold on while we say goodbye to everyone. But to everyone who listened in, everyone who watches the replay, thank you for listening, and the both of you again, thank you so very much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
I see a few hand claps.
Thank you, Tara.